The very last deep dive. This series has been an adventure. 32 episodes, over 12 hours of content previewing in depth the 2018 NFL season. And here we are, number one in my power rankings, the Philadelphia Eagles. So we're going to get into it, review this team positionally, how they stack up with the rest of the league, take a look at the schedule, how many wins I think this team could rack up this year. And then tomorrow, get ready guys, I will have my full predictions show, flag planning, my record for every team, playoffs, Super Bowl pick, award winners, all that good stuff. That will be up tomorrow. So let's get into the Eagles here, who were easily my best take, something I'm very proud of. This team was 66-1 to win the Super Bowl. I called it the best investment in the country. Screw the stock market. They were the least favored team to win the division. I picked them to win the division. I picked them to go to the NFC Championship. They go even further than that. Everyone was all in on Dak Prescott. Most people were kind of iffy on Carson Wentz. Sailed a few balls over the middle. People thought he was inaccurate. I said he could figure that out and would finish the year at least a top 10 quarterback, and he was the MVP of 2017 before the ACL injury in week 15, was it? So any negative thing I say about the Eagles in this video, Eagles fans, I'm going to make you wait at least a year before you say, I don't know what I'm talking about when it comes to this Eagles team. I'll probably say some things that end up being false, but cut me some slack, at least on this one. So let's get into it here. Let's start with the quarterback, Carson Wentz. I've got him ranked 6th in the league right now. And how crazy is it that this is only Wentz's third year in the NFL? Should have won an MVP last year. I still would have given it to him, to be honest. Anyway, Carson Wentz has all of the elite tools you look for: arm strength, pocket mobility, and ability to sense pressure. He's proved that he can be an accurate quarterback. It was a question at first. He's definitely proved that he can improve that, and I expect that he will continue to improve his accuracy. Like I said, it's only his third season. About 4 years ago, I firmly believed we would never see a quarterback as good as Aaron Rodgers in terms of having everything you could possibly ask for from a quarterback: mobility, arm strength, accuracy, leadership, consistency, all that. Until I saw Carson Wentz. That moment actually hit me in a preseason game when I saw him elude a defender and make a ridiculous throw before the season started. That was kind of my Carson Wentz moment. Now, he's still got a long ways to go, especially from a consistency standpoint. I do think his accuracy can continue to get better, his post-snap processor, all that. He's still very young, but there's really nothing else to say about Carson Wentz other than the fact that he's coming off an ACL injury, and we don't know when we're going to see him now. So he's not playing week 1. At some point in this season, probably in the first quarter, he will be back, and I expect him to be great. All the pieces were kind of in line last year, so statistically, it might be a little less efficient than he was last year, but he's still going to be one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. And then he got Nick Foles, and I'm a little lower on Nick Foles. I get it, won the Super Bowl MVP. But look, he had everything around him. Atlanta, New England, it's not like he was dealing with really great pass rushes, and Minnesota, I don't know what team that was that went into Philadelphia in the NFC Championship. So credit Nick Foles. He really impressed me. My opinion on him has changed. I think he is one of the best, if not the best, backup quarterbacks in the league, but I do still believe he is a backup. I think we've seen in the preseason already, they're holding Jason Peters out. He's dealing with a bigger pass rush. He can make some really bad decisions. He can force balls. He can float balls. I do think that people are going to turn on Nick Foles very quickly, and people already have in this preseason. I think the Eagles are probably going to regret not getting a second-round pick for him earlier in this offseason, because ultimately I think he's going to return to that career backup role. I don't think we're going to see a very good Nick Foles here, and I don't think any teams are really going to see him as a starter for their future. So I do think things are going to start a little slower here with Nick Foles. We'll talk a little bit about the home opener at the end of this episode. So let's keep moving on here throughout the rest of this super talented roster. Eagles fans, by the way, are going to want me to mention Nate Sudfeld. He's got a good arm. He's decently mobile. He's got a long way to prove before I'm even starting to talk about Nate Sudfeld the way a lot of Eagles fans are. A lot of quarterbacks look really good in the preseason against vanilla defenses. All right, running back, Jay Ajayi. I think my perception of Jay Ajayi is much lower than what a lot of people think. I see him as a good starting running back who can run with power, has big play potential, but he's a guy who has that cloud of when is that big injury going to come? He fell so much in the draft from a potential first-round pick to the 6th round because of the injury concerns. And we've seen already, Miami, we don't really want to pay this guy. We're not going to risk anything. He goes for a 4th-round pick. Everyone's like, oh my God, he's only a 4th-round pick. I'm like, that's actually kind of a lot for a running back who I don't think is a game-breaking running back who at any moment his career could end. And it sounds grim, and it probably is. But I do think Philly is going to limit his touches. They're going to use him when they need him. Kind of similar to what I've said about Dalvin Cook, except to a more extreme extent. So for fantasy football, I'm staying far, far away from Jay Ajayi. I see him getting 8 to 12 carries a game. There's going to be a few games where they rely on him a little more and he kind of breaks out. But there's going to be games where they're blowing people out and they're like, you know what, second quarter, Jay Ajayi, take a seat. We're going to run Wendell Smallwood into the ground. But I also really like this combo of receiving backs here. Darren Sproles coming back. Let's not forget about him. He makes this team, which I think to some people is a little bit of a surprise. And I think that means this team is ready to roll with Darren Sproles as a big part of this offense, especially with the receiver injuries early in this season. So I think Darren Sproles is going to be a bigger factor here as a receiver than a lot of people are prepared for. And then Corey Clement. I mean, this guy could be the future running back for this team. Looked incredible in the Super Bowl. Not just catching the ball, which he's clearly very good at. What is with these Wisconsin running backs coming out of that run system and then getting in the NFL and all of a sudden being some of the best receiving backs in the NFL? James White, now Corey Clement. These guys were kind of criticized for their ability to catch the ball coming out. All of a sudden, they're awesome at it. But Clement's got that ideal size. I think he is going to be a big factor here. If he ends up finishing the year with more catches than Sproles and Ajayi combined, and then also has more carries than Jay Ajayi, just because of everything I said about them being careful with him, would not be the least bit surprised. I think he's got a lot of talent. And then Wendell Smallwood, he's just a guy, but he does have some explosiveness. So you really do have 4 guys here that I think will be involved. I think they're kind of taking the New England approach here of running back by committee. All these guys have, kind of selective skill sets, but I kind of like it. So let's keep moving. Wide receiver, we got Alshon Jeffrey here. We know what he is, but the injury's big concern here. A lot of people thought he might start the season on the pup. It looks like he will be back at some point earlier on in the year, but as far as I've heard, he will not be there for the opener. Nelson Aguilar, really impressed last year. A lot of people had kind of written him off, and he bounces back. I think he has a really good season. I think he's going to be the number 1 statistical leader for receiving yards this year for the Eagles. Mike Wallace replacing what they had in Torrey Smith last year. Plug him right into that role. Pretty much the same player. And then you got Mac Hollins. Actually showed some nice things at receiver for a guy that a lot of people thought was just drafted to be a gunner on special teams. Kind of a big-bodied, good athlete guy. He could continue to develop. I don't know if he's going to have much of a role this year, but keep an eye on him. And then Shelton Gibson. Don't see a whole lot there. And then DeAndre Carter makes this team as well. Kind of an interesting name just to keep on your radar. And then at tight end, Zach Ertz, might as well have mentioned him as a receiver. He will flex out wide quite a bit. He's basically an oversized slot receiver, but he is incredible. A lot of people critique my Madden rating of him, not having him, up there with your Kelsey and Gronk. You see the receiving numbers and you would think he should be up there, but he doesn't block at all. They'll put him in line occasionally, but he does not do a good job in there. So that is my take on Ertz. And then Dallas Goedert, thought this was a good pick. This team won't be able to pay everyone. I could see them kind of phasing out Zach Ertz, depending what the rest of the receiver situation looks like, because I do think Dallas Goedert has a lot of upside as a receiver, but will also block. That said, Alshon's not getting any younger. Probably not letting Ertz go if it's just Nelson Aguilar there. I do think Goedert will be involved. I think Zach Ertz is basically going to be used as a receiver here, and Goedert will be playing a lot of reps at tight end, especially in the goal line. We'll see a lot of sets with both these guys on the field. Then you got Richard Rodgers there. He stinks. I'm actually kind of surprised he made this team. He's an oversized, slow tight end who can't block. I don't know how he made the team, but then Josh Perkins makes the team. All of this is good for tied for 14th at wide receiver. Actually, I misspoke. It's tied for 16th at wide receiver. So you got a bunch of weapons here to help out the quarterback, but above all, the biggest weapon on this team is this offensive line, ranking 2nd in the NFL with all the injuries in Dallas. You could probably say this is the best offensive line right now. So from left to right, we'll see what we get from Jason Peters Now, this could change pretty quickly if, at 36 years old, coming off a serious injury, if he can't be what he was, if he has a serious drop-off, which is a possibility, then there's going to be some concerns here. We saw Vaitai kind of getting wrecked in the preseason at left tackle, but then you got Wisniewski, solid veteran guard, can also play center. You got Chance Warmack backing him up as a flex guard. You got Jason Kelsey at center, one of, if not the best centers in the league. Brandon Brooks at right guard, just a freak. And then talk about freaks, Lane Taylor at right tackle. So this line freaking dominates. You got 3 all-pro guys, maybe 4 if Jason Peters can bounce back and play at the level he's been able to do throughout his career. It's just unreal. And this is the reason they were able to sustain their success with Nick Foles at quarterback. It's just a testament to how important offensive line play is in the modern NFL, where it ain't easy to find linemen. And this team got a bunch of them. Also keep an eye on Jordan Mailata. Was impressed by him in the preseason. Definitely a project, but a guy coming over from, I think, Australia. Was he a rugby player? Basically learning a new sport. A massive individual. Could be an interesting prospect to take over at left tackle or right tackle if they move Lane Johnson over when Jason Peters hangs it up. So offensively, I've got them ranked 5th. Like I said, I don't think it'll be very pretty with Nick Foles in there. Should be able to get some things done, but they're probably not even a top 15 offense with Nick Foles in my opinion. But you get Wentz back, top 5. So let's move on to the defensive side of the ball. So many guys on this defense to talk about. As a unit, I rank them 5th overall. But let's break it down, starting with the run defense. I've got them tied for 8th. All starts with Fletcher Cox. Tim Jernigan right now on the non-football injury list, but when he gets back, awesome run defending interior guys, so that's a great start. But you got Haloti Ngata, definitely not a bad guy to plug in there in the rotation and to start until Jernigan does get back. You got Brandon Graham, plays great run defense. Michael Bennett's going to play on the edge on 1st and 2nd down. He's basically an athletic D tackle playing on the outside on 1st and 2nd down. You got 2 super fast linebackers in Hicks and Nigel Bradham, who's suspended to start the year. Neither of these guys are thumpers, but will fly around. When the front is eating up blocks like this, you're allowed to have smaller linebackers, which is just a huge compliment to what this defense is able to do. So run defense, they rank tied for 8th. Pass rush, they'll come in 5th. That's all going to start with Brandon Graham generating pressure. Probably the best power rusher on the edge in the NFL. He gets his hands inside your shoulder pads with the leverage he generates. Good luck. But you also got Fletcher Cox on the inside. He's hard to block. And then Derek Barnett in his 2nd year screaming off the edge. Really like him. And then you got to talk about Michael Bennett, who's going to play kind of that 3rd down defensive tackle and do his thing. Now, Michael Bennett had a huge drop-off last year. He's getting up there in age. He's suffered a bunch of injuries. I don't think he's going to be as big of a factor here as a lot of people think. It's a big name to acquire here, but, I think he's going to slowly end his career here kind of quietly. You also got Chris Long, who played at a surprisingly high level last year. And then just keep adding to the name list, Josh Sweat. Super intriguing prospect. Now, he's barely going to play in his rookie year, so he's going to develop, learn a bunch of different skill sets from all these guys who have different technique. And, 2-3 years from now, when Brandon Graham's getting phased out, maybe Josh Sweat can emerge as that guy, sort of like a Daniil Hunter did in Minnesota. A mid-round pick, freak athlete like Sweat. Now, I wasn't quite as high on Sweat in the draft, but it's a perfect landing spot for him to do just that. So these guys are coming from all over the place. They're going to be so hard to block. I mean, basically what they do at the line of scrimmage is what makes the Eagles so great. It does help that you give them an elite quarterback on top of that. So, to the people that don't rank them first in their power rankings, I get it. This team's suffered some injuries. You might not have Alshon Jeffrey. Carson Wentz isn't going to start the year. You got some suspensions to deal with. At the end of the day, when you're playing competitive football in December and January, and this team is rolling, you better come to play. You better have an offensive line. You better have a defensive line. Or this team is simply going to dictate what they want to do. It doesn't matter who they got at running back and receiver and sometimes quarterback. When you have such dominant line play, that's where it all starts. So let's talk about the secondary and the coverage unit, starting with the linebackers. I got them ranked 17th. They have potential to be higher with Jordan Hicks, who I really like. He's shown so many flashes, but he can't stay healthy. and he just needs to play more consistently and stay healthy. Until he can prove to do that, I can't rank him really as high as I would like as a middle linebacker. Now, getting him back, in theory, could actually be a big boost for this defense. But right now, him coming in, Michael Kendricks leaving, that's about a push compared to last year. And then you got Nigel Bradham. Good for him to get this extension. One of the best coverage linebackers in the game. Love what he can do. So from a coverage standpoint, these linebackers are going to be on point. We'll see what Jordan Hicks ends up offering. If he comes in healthy and looks like the best version of himself, this is going to be one of the 5 best linebacker units in the league. We just got to see it. The depth, it's kind of whatever. I am super intrigued by Camus Krugier-Hill. He's just a big safety playing linebacker, super fast, and he's made some plays for this team. So then you go to the secondary. Ronald Darby going to be the number 1 corner here. Now, this team's going to have an interesting decision to make on Ronald Darby. Is he going to be this team's number 1 corner? Is he worth paying? This team is entering that stage in the sort of dynasty building mode where they got to make some tough decisions on contracts because you got Carson Wentz just around the corner. At some point, there's a chance Derek Barnett's going to demand a ton of money, and this team doesn't exactly have a ton of leeway in terms of cap space. So they're going to have a tough decision to make at the end of this year. It's all going to come down to how well he plays. He's somewhere between a high-end number 2 and a low-end number 1, and how he can play and which version of himself shows up this year is going to depend who he's playing for in 2019. You got a bunch of young guys that are kind of in a good spot, especially behind this pass rush to step into that number 1 corner here. It starts with Jalen Mills. Lengthy, athletic dude, started to really come on the second half of last year. He could be poised for a big year. We'll see. You got Sidney Jones, a guy who's kind of gotten lost in probably the best cornerback class in the history of the NFL. Some people had this guy as the number 1 corner in that class, a class that is just loaded. Marshawn Lattimore, Tre'Davious White, Marlon Humphrey, Akello Witherspoon, Adoree Jackson, Chidobe Awuzie, Jordan Lewis, Shaquille Griffin. We'll see what Kevin King has to offer. Garyon Conley, a first-round pick, has hardly seen the field for the Raiders. I mean, the freaking corner class last year is absurd. And a lot of people thought that Sidney Jones might have been the best out of all those guys. So that's a huge wild card here. Haven't heard a whole lot about him. I know he actually came back healthy healthy is a relative term, but he was on the roster to end the season. Played a few snaps here and there. So he could definitely factor into the Ronald Darby decision. Got Rasul Douglas out of West Virginia. Physical guy, kind of a playmaker. And then Avonte Maddox, really good nickel corner coming out. Huge playmaker. He made my sleeper list pre-draft. And I could see him being a playmaker here that replaces what they had in Patrick Robinson, at least to an extent. And then at safety, you got Rodney McLeod. It might be pronounced McLeod, but McLeod is just too perfect for a prototype center fielding free safety type. Same thing can be said about Corey Graham. He's just an older version of Rodney McLeod. He's going to play here because Malcolm Jenkins is used as the box safety, nickel corner, linebacker hybrid that any NFL defensive coordinator dreams about. Glad to see him finally getting the respect he deserves. I've been screaming for the last 2-3 years that he's one of the most underrated players in the NFL, and he's been making me look good for that one. Definitely one of my favorite players in the entire league. I think I got to order up a jersey. So anyway, this team ranks 5th for both offense and defense. One of the few teams in the league that's going to come in with a top 10 offense and a top 10 defense. Coach and culture, they're going to rank 3rd here. This team found out how to win. Don't see why that's really going to change. You do have the Super Bowl hangover thing here, which I do think is a thing. It's really hard to repeat in this league. This team is already dealing with some suspensions and injuries early, so they're going to have some adversity already to overcome here. But they did learn how to overcome adversity when they lost a quarterback and still won the Super Bowl last year. So we'll see. It's a freaking loaded roster. Let's talk about the schedule now. So you're going to start with Atlanta in 2 days. 2 days. Let's go. I'm taking Atlanta. They're actually underdogs in this one. I've already got money on the money line for Atlanta. Look, you got a bunch of suspensions here. You got some players not starting, notably your quarterback with Timmy Jernigan, Alshon Jeffrey. You got Nigel Bradham out. So, it should be a good game. Historically, the home opener, the Super Bowl defending champ, has played really well in these games, getting that crowd involved early. But I'm kind of high on Atlanta this year, surprisingly, given my thoughts on Matt Ryan. I do think Atlanta can exploit teams whose strengths are, let's say, not the secondary, which I would say that for Philadelphia. Now, it's not that they have a bad secondary, but I don't see anyone on this team that's going to be able to cover Julio Jones and everything this team has going. I will say Philly is going to dominate the line of scrimmage in that one. We'll see what Nick Foles can do. Anyway, the rest of the schedule, business as usual. You got a nice stretch here to kind of collect yourselves. Tampa Bay and Indianapolis at home. You know, take some time, get Wentz healthy, get your guys back in here, and start to get this thing rolling. And then you got at Tennessee, Minnesota, at New York. That's a tough stretch. I'm actually starting to slowly rise on New York a little bit. Maybe nothing crazy, but I'm going to give Philly the loss in that one. Then you got Carolina. Carolina's falling apart. Both their starting tackles are out. We've talked about how there's no such thing as tackle depth in the NFL. I think Carolina could actually be pretty bad this year. You got to go to Jacksonville. No secret what I think about them this year. Dallas, New Orleans, Giants, Washington. You know, those are all really from Carolina to Washington losable games, but I think they can handle it. Give them wins there at Dallas. I think Dallas might be a bit of a second half team this year, getting that offensive line back healthy. And then at the Rams, I'll give them a loss. Houston and Washington wins to end the year. So I've got them overcoming the 10-win over-under, going over 12-4. And we will see tomorrow when I get into my prediction show what I think in terms of division, Super Bowl. Can they repeat? I'm excited to get that out tomorrow. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. If you enjoyed the series, hit that like button. Find me on Twitter at TFG_football. Cheers as always, guys. We'll see you next time.